Growing up in Orlando, the modern house with its manicured lawn always felt stifling. My family, the Clarks, was a picture of suburban success where worth was tallied in dollars and status. My older brother, Ian Clark, ruled the roost at 35, a real estate tycoon, whose name was plastered on billboards across town. His sharp suits and sharper tongue made him the center of every gathering. My mother, Janet Clark, a retired bank manager, filled her days with charity events, always smoothing over tensions with a smile. My father, Dennis Clark, a former civil engineer, preferred his recliner and golf magazines to family squabbles. My younger sister, Paige Clark, a 25-year-old medical student, teetered between her ambitions and Ian's iron grip on the family's future. I was the outlier, the one who'd rather weave stories than chase profits. Writing had been my refuge since I was young, sparked by my high school English teacher, Mrs. Ellen Ward. She'd slip me novels and say, "Your voice matters, Fiona." Her words stuck with me, but Ian saw my passion as a dead end. "You're wasting your potential." He'd snap, his eyes narrowing like I was an embarrassment. Mom would murmur, "He's just looking out for you," while Dad stayed buried in his reading. Paige, bless her, would pass me poetry anthologies in secret, but she never stood up to Ian's rants. Ian had my life planned out: graduate with a finance degree from the University of Central Florida, join his real estate firm, and follow his lead. I'd finished college at 22, clutching a diploma I didn't want, and started writing for a local blog while working part-time at a bookstore. Ian hated it. At family dinners, he'd flaunt his latest deal, some shiny condo project, then turn to me with a smirk. "Still playing with your little stories?" he'd ask, as if my work was a childish prank. Mom would steer the conversation elsewhere. Dad would nod absently, and Paige would shoot me a look of quiet sympathy. The tension boiled over at a family barbecue 3 years before I left Orlando. I was 22, fresh out of college, balancing my blog gigs and bookstore shifts. Ian had invited his business associates to our backyard, turning it into a showcase of his success with catered trays and live music. As I helped serve drinks, Ian cornered me near the patio, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're a freeloader, Fiona, mooching off Mom and Dad while the rest of us build something real." The words hit like a slap. Guests froze, their eyes darting between us. My hands trembled, the tray nearly slipping from my grip. Mom whispered, "He's had too much wine," but her excuse felt hollow. Dad stared at the ground, silent as ever. Paige tried to grab my arm, her face pale, but I shrugged her off, my throat tight with humiliation. That night, I sat in my room, Ian's accusation echoing in my mind. He hadn't just mocked my dreams, he'd stripped away my place in the family. I thought of Mrs. Ward's encouragement, the stories I'd poured my heart into, the life I wanted, but couldn't have here. Ian's plan for me was a cubicle in his office, a future where my words were irrelevant. Mom's placating, Dad's indifference, even Paige's quiet support. It all felt like a cage. I wasn't just fighting Ian's scorn, I was fighting a family that didn't see me. The barbecue had made it clear staying in Orlando meant surrendering my voice. I wasn't ready to give up, but I didn't know how to break free yet. A rainy morning in Orlando found me standing outside my bookstore job, ready to break free. I was 22, a finance degree in hand from the University of Central Florida, but working part-time at a bookstore and writing for a local blog instead of joining my brother's real estate empire. His plan for me, a cubicle in his firm, crunching numbers under his watchful eye, felt like a prison sentence. The sting of his words from the family barbecue 3 years ago, labeling me a freeloader, still lingered like a bruise. I'd tried to play along, balancing shifts while writing in stolen moments, but every hour at the bookstore reminded me of his contempt. That morning, I quit my job, packed a suitcase, and caught a bus to Tallahassee. I didn't tell Mom, Dad, or Paige. This was my rebellion, my shot at a life where my stories had value. Tallahassee welcomed me with sticky air and a tiny apartment I shared with Maria Wells, a fashion designer with a quick laugh and a talent for turning thrift store finds into art. Maria made our bare-bones place feel alive, hanging colorful scarves as curtains and brewing coffee for our late-night chats about chasing dreams. To cover rent, I worked 2 jobs: mornings at a cafe steaming milk for hurried students, and evenings at a secondhand bookstore sorting paperbacks I knew by heart. The hours were grueling, sore feet, tight budgets, and ramen dinners, but they kept me out of my brother's reach. I signed up for a writing workshop at a community center, sneaking in after shifts with a notebook full of half-finished stories. The instructor saw promise in my pieces about ordinary lives, waitresses, cab drivers, dreamers like me, and pushed me to refine them. I kept my move secret, ignoring Mom's voicemails and Paige's worried texts. I wasn't ready for their questions or my brother's smug lectures. Every word I wrote felt like a defiance, a claim to the life I wanted. One night at the workshop, I ran into Nathan Gray, a friend from college who'd also left Orlando behind. Nathan, a scruffy musician with a battered guitar, was surviving on bar gigs and tips. Over greasy fries at a diner, he told me his family had pushed him toward law school, but he chose music instead. "They think I'm throwing my life away," he said, his eyes steady but worn. "You get that right?" I did. His stubborn pursuit of music mirrored my own fight for writing, and we clicked instantly, swapping stories of family pressure and small victories. The workshop became my lifeline. I wrote about the people I met: single parents working double shifts, immigrants starting over in a new city. My first piece about a barista saving for her kid's future got praise from the group. It wasn't a paycheck, but it was proof I wasn't wasting my time. Tallahassee wasn't glamorous. Bills stacked up, and some nights I questioned everything, staring at my bank account's dismal balance. Maria would catch my mood, slide me a sketchbook, and say, "Keep writing, Fiona. You didn't come here to quit." Her words pulled me through. Nathan and I leaned on each other. He'd share his latest song raw and honest, and I'd read him my drafts, both of us chasing dreams the world didn't understand. But starting over was heavy. Loneliness crept in, and exhaustion was a constant companion. I'd lie awake wondering if my brother's voice was right, that I'd fail, that I was nothing without his approval. Yet every time I picked up my pen, I remembered why I left: to prove my stories mattered, to build something he couldn't tear down. Tallahassee was my new beginning, but the road ahead was uncertain, and I was only just starting to find my footing. The summer after, I never expected to see my brother at a charity event in Tallahassee. I was 25, scraping by with my cafe and bookstore jobs, pouring my heart into writing at the community center. Life in Tallahassee was tough, but mine free from my brother's shadow. I'd kept my move secret, dodging family calls, determined to carve my own path. That evening, I was working a shift at the bookstore, stacking shelves for a local charity book sale. The store was buzzing with donors, their chatter blending with soft jazz from a speaker. I was carrying a box of paperbacks when I froze. My brother stood across the room, his tailored suit and smug grin unmistakable. He was in town for a real estate conference, schmoozing with Tallahassee's elite, and had brought Mom, Dad, and Paige along to play the perfect family. He spotted me before I could slip away. "Well, look who's here," he said, his voice cutting through the crowd. Heads turned. My stomach dropped as he strode over, Mom trailing behind with a forced smile, Dad looking uncomfortable, and Paige fidgeting nervously. "Still playing shop clerk," he taunted loud enough for nearby donors to hear. "I thought you'd at least try to make something of yourself by now." His words were a blade slicing open old wounds from the barbecue years ago. I set the box down, my hands shaking, and shot back. "I'm building a life I care about, not chasing your approval." My voice was steady, but inside, I was unraveling. He laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Building a life? You're a freeloader, Fiona, living off scraps while we carry the family name." The room went quiet, eyes boring into me. My face burned, humiliation washing over me like a wave. Mom stepped forward, her voice soft. "Let's not do this here," she said, glancing at the crowd, but her words lacked conviction, more plea than defense. Dad stood silent, staring at his shoes as always. Paige's eyes met mine full of sympathy, but she bit her lip too scared to speak. I wanted her to say something, anything, but her silence stung almost as much as my brother's attack. I straightened, my heart pounding. "You don't get to define me," I said loud enough for the room to hear. "My life isn't yours to judge." He smirked, unfazed. "Keep telling yourself that," he said, turning to charm a nearby donor, dismissing me like I was nothing. The crowd resumed their chatter, but the weight of his words clung to me. I finished my shift in a daze, his accusation echoing freeloader. It wasn't just an insult, it was an attempt to erase everything I'd fought for. Mom's weak attempt to smooth things over, Dad's silence, Paige's hesitation. They all felt like betrayal. I realized then that staying connected to them meant living in his shadow, always defending my worth. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a choice. I blocked their numbers, Mom, Dad, Paige, and my brother. No more calls, no more texts, no more chances for him to tear me down. I'd spent 3 years in Tallahassee building something real, stories that mattered, a life that was mine. The charity event showed me the truth. My family wasn't my home anymore. They'd chosen his side or no side at all, and I couldn't keep fighting for their approval. Writing was my way forward, my voice louder than his scorn. I sat at my desk, opened my notebook, and poured my pain into words. Each sentence was a step away from them, a vow to never look back. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I knew it was mine to walk alone. One chilly evening in Tallahassee, I stepped into a writing workshop, unaware it would change my life. I was 26, living in a cramped apartment with Maria, working long hours at the cafe and bookstore to make ends meet. After cutting ties with my family following the charity event showdown, I'd thrown myself into writing, determined to prove my stories had worth. The workshop, hosted at a local library, was a chance to sharpen my craft. I was nervous, clutching my notebook, when a gruff voice called my name. Stanley Ross, a veteran writer with a salt and pepper beard and a reputation for brutal honesty, ran the group. He'd published novels about working-class lives, and I admired his raw, unpolished style. Stanley invited me to join his writing circle, a small crew of misfits who met weekly to critique drafts. I poured my energy into stories about immigrant workers, janitors, farmhands, people I'd met at the cafe, whose struggles mirrored my own fight for a voice. Stanley was tough, tearing into my first draft with red ink, but he saw potential. "You've got grit," he said, handing back my pages. "Keep digging." His feedback pushed me to refine my work, focusing on the quiet strength of everyday people. For the first time, I felt like my writing could matter. Months later, I submitted a piece about a Cuban dishwasher chasing the American dream to a local magazine. To my shock, it was accepted. Seeing my name in print alongside praise from readers online was a rush I'd never known. The $200 check wasn't much, but it was mine, earned through words, not my brother's handouts. The magazine's editor, Heidi Quinn, a sharp woman with a knack for spotting talent, reached out. She liked my voice and offered to mentor me, suggesting pitches for bigger publications. Heidi's encouragement was a lifeline. She saw what I could become, not what my family thought I was. But success didn't mean stability. Money was tight. My cafe shifts left me drained, my hands raw from steaming milk. The bookstore paid little, and rent ate up most of my checks. Maria and I lived frugally, splitting grocery bills and scouring thrift stores for basics. Some nights I'd stare at my bank account, barely $50 to my name, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Maria would catch my worry, toss me a mug of tea, and say, "Your stories are worth it, Fiona. Keep going." Her faith steadied me, but the grind was relentless. Late nights, writing, early mornings, pouring coffee, and constant fear of falling behind. Heidi kept me focused. She'd meet me at a diner, scribbling notes on my drafts, pushing me to pitch to national outlets. One piece about a migrant worker's family caught the eye of a regional journal, earning me $500, and a flood of comments from readers who saw themselves in my words. Each publication felt like a brick in the foundation I was building, proof I didn't need my brother's world to succeed. But the hustle never stopped. I'd write after shifts, eyes burning, fueled by cheap coffee and stubbornness. Some days I doubted myself, haunted by memories of my brother's voice calling me a failure. Stanley's group became my refuge. We'd share stories over pizza, each draft a piece of ourselves. One night, I read a piece about a single mother's sacrifice, my voice cracking as I thought of my own fight. Stanley nodded rare praise in his silence. Those moments kept me going when bills piled up or rejection letters stung. Heidi's mentorship opened doors, but every step forward came with a cost. Sleepless nights, empty wallets, and the weight of proving myself. I was building a career word by word, but it was a lonely road. Tallahassee had given me a start, but I knew bigger challenges were coming, and I had to be ready. When my first book hit the shelves in San Francisco, I stood staring at my name on the cover. I was 28, and the collection of stories about immigrant laborers born from years of workshops and late-night drafts had finally become real. The publisher had taken a chance on me after Heidi's recommendation, and the launch event in a cozy bookstore drew a crowd of readers eager to hear the voices I'd captured. I spoke at literary festivals across the city, sharing stages with established authors, my words resonating with audiences who saw their own struggles in my pages. Each applause was validation, a quiet triumph over the doubts that once kept me awake. Moving to San Francisco had been the leap I needed. The city's vibrant energy with its foggy hills and diverse neighborhoods fueled my creativity. I landed contracts with major magazines, writing features on unsung heroes, teachers in underfunded schools, nurses working double shifts. The paychecks allowed me to quit the cafe and bookstore jobs, focusing full-time on writing. My apartment overlooked the bay, a far cry from the cramped space I'd shared with Maria in Tallahassee. She'd stayed behind pursuing her fashion line, but we talked often, her encouragement a constant in my new life. Success brought clarity. I realized living authentically, chasing stories that mattered, not chasing approval, was the only way to feel whole. The loneliness lingered, a hollow space where family once was, but I no longer questioned my path. My book climbed bestseller lists in niche categories, and invitations poured in for panels and signings. Readers sent letters sharing how my words inspired them to speak up. It was humbling proof that my voice had power beyond what my brother ever imagined. One afternoon, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. It was Paige reaching out after years of silence. Her voice was hesitant, laced with exhaustion. "I miss you," she said, then spilled about the pressure she faced. My brother was pushing her into business school, mapping her future in his company, dismissing her interest in medicine as impractical. "He says it's for my own good," she whispered, but I heard the doubt. I listened, my heart aching for the sister I'd left behind. "Follow what sets your soul on fire," I told her, echoing the advice I'd learned the hard way. Our call was brief, no promises of reunion, but it cracked open a door I'd thought sealed. San Francisco became my proving ground. I networked at coffee shops, collaborated on essays with journalists, and even taught a guest class at a local college. The city's pulse matched my own, restless, ambitious, unapologetic. Money flowed steadily, now enough for comfortable living and savings, but I stayed grounded, remembering the ramen nights and empty accounts. Heidi checked in regularly, her guidance turning into friendship as my career grew. Stanley sent a congratulatory note from Tallahassee, his gruff praise meaning more than any review. Reflecting on my journey, I saw how far I'd come from the girl who fled Orlando. Success wasn't just the book or the contracts, it was the peace in knowing I'd chosen myself. The ache of family distance remained softened by Paige's call, but I no longer carried their judgment. My stories connected people, bridging gaps my brother couldn't understand. San Francisco had given me wings, and I was soaring, ready for whatever came next. 5 years later, I stepped into the luxurious hotel in Orlando where my brother was hosting his company's 10th anniversary gala. I was 33, armed with my best-selling book, a stack of magazine clippings, and a literary award tucked in my bag. The invitation had come unexpectedly, a glossy card boasting his empire's growth. I'd returned to Orlando not for reconciliation, but to close the chapter on his hold over me. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and suited executives, champagne flowing as my brother held court at the center boasting about deals and expansions. Mom and Dad mingled politely while Paige stood nearby, her smile strained in a business attire that didn't suit her. He saw me enter, his face tightening before he plastered on a grin. Fiona, what a surprise, he called, drawing attention from his guests. Partners and investors turned curious. I walked straight to him, pulling out my book and holding it up. "Congratulations on 10 years, I said calmly. I thought I'd share my own milestone. Whispers rippled as I displayed the cover, then fanned out articles from national magazines and the award plaque. "This is what I've built without your guidance, a career telling stories that change lives." His eyes narrowed, but he tried to laugh it off. "Always the dreamer," he said, turning to his audience. "My sister here thinks scribbling is a job." Cute, right? A few chuckled nervously, but I didn't flinch. "It's more than a job," I replied, my voice carrying across the room. "It's impact. Readers grant speaking tours, real success, not just buildings." I detailed my journey briefly, the book sales, the foundation I'd started for young writers, the lives touched. Guests leaned in impressed while my brother's smile faded. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're embarrassing yourself and us. Why come back if not to apologize?" I met his gaze. "I'm here to end this," I said firmly. "You called me a freeloader, pushed your plans on everyone. I'm done. Our relationship ends tonight." Mom gasped, reaching for my arm, but I gently pulled away. Dad shifted, uncomfortably silent as ever. Paige's eyes widened, a mix of fear and admiration. Turning to Paige, I softened. "You don't have to follow his path," I told her. "Medicine is your calling, pursue it on your terms. I'll support you, no strings." She nodded tearfully, squeezing my hand. The room buzzed. My brother's partners exchanged glances, his arrogance suddenly exposed. One investor murmured about reevaluating deals, another slipped away early. In the months that followed, the fallout hit hard. Word spread about his dismissive treatment of family, eroding his polished image. Key partners pulled back, citing trust issues, and his expansion plans stalled. He lost deals, his empire cracking under the weight of his ego. Isolation set in. He'd alienated those closest left, scrambling to salvage his reputation. I channeled my pain into action, expanding my scholarship fund for aspiring writers from tough backgrounds. It awarded grants, mentorships, turning my scars into opportunities for others. Paige broke free, enrolling in med school independently, our bond stronger without his shadow. Mom and Dad stayed neutral, but the distance felt final. Looking back, the lesson was clear. Living true to yourself outweighs family approval every time. Chasing authenticity builds a legacy. Arrogance breeds isolation. My brother's fall showed that no empire withstands a hollow core.
What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping family drama, shocking betrayals, and the revenge stories you won't believe.